Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. An investigation into the credibility of two state troopers has led to nearly 200 cases dismissed. We've been following the investigation into Trooper Marcario and Sergeant Morrison. The Wake County DA says she's dismissed many pending cases they were involved in, but what does this mean for people already convicted? WRAL's Sarah Krueger joins me to talk about this case. Sarah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So what are Trooper Marcario and Sergeant Morrison being investigated for?
So there was a deadly crash in October on Capitol Boulevard in Raleigh, and that crash is what prompted the credibility questions about both of those troopers, questions about their truthfulness. So in that crash, it was a single car crash. Tyrone Mason was killed, and we have reported his family has hired civil rights attorneys, and we know that as far as the investigation into the two troopers, the SBI, the State Bureau of Investigation, is looking into them. And this investigation, it resulted in the Wake County District Attorney Lauren Freeman dismissing nearly 200 pending cases that were tied to both of those troopers.
And when did Wake County's DA start dismissing some of these cases if this all first started in October?
Yeah, so she says as soon as she found out about the credibility issues, that was all announced in January earlier this year. So although the crash was in October, it wasn't immediately clear, that there was an issue there at play, that there was going to be an investigation unfolding. But she says as soon as she did find out about these issues, she dismissed those cases. And again, that was just the pending cases. So the cases that had not yet made their way to an ultimate resolution in the court system. And those were mostly DWI cases that we're talking about here.
Okay. And in your story, you talk about a man who was convicted in a case involving these two troopers. I believe that he didn't talk to you on camera, but told you his story. How did you get in contact and meet him?
Yeah, so he called me. He had seen our reporting on this topic, and he called me and said, hey, I was involved in a situation with Trooper Marcario. He was ultimately, this man was convicted of DWI in 2021. And he took issue with Trooper Marcario's behavior in his case. He claims that Trooper Marcario was not truthful and that Trooper Marcario was the charging trooper in his case. And he claims he was the only one who testified in court. So this man reached out to us, not wanting to yet do an on-camera interview, but just really to ask, about people in his situation who feel like they were convicted and, they shouldn't have been when it involved one of these two troopers. And so that prompted us to ask a number of questions of officials and, look into what is the recourse for people like him.
Let's take a quick break right there and we'll be right back. Sarah, what did you learn about the difference between pending cases and convictions when it comes to this investigation that's going on into these two troopers?
Yeah, so for my reporting, I interviewed a defense attorney based out of Durham. His name is Daniel Meyer, and he is not connected to any of these cases, but he was able just to offer legal explanations. So he explained that a district attorney, all they are allowed to do is drop pending cases. And so that is what DA Lauren Freeman did in this situation. She dropped all pending cases involving both of these troopers. But the only way to overturn a conviction, he says, is a motion for appropriate relief. So that's called an MAR. And that is something that a judge has to decide upon, not the DA.
Okay. And, if someone who had been convicted wanted to see if they could get that overturned, how could someone go about getting one of these MARs?
Yeah, so you have to go to court, file a motion, file an MAR, and then that will result in a hearing before the court, a hearing with a judge. And so what DA Lauren Freeman has told me is that she will only consent to dismissing cases in which the convictions were after the October crash, because before that, she said there's no information that would establish a lack of credibility. Now, of course, this goes before a judge, this MAR, so a judge may see it differently. But as Attorney Daniel Meyer explained it to me, Freeman's thoughts on it are relevant because she could, kind of before the case is even heard by a judge, she could say, hey, yeah, I consent to dismissing that. And then at least that way the judge knows, okay, there's no opposition from the DA, and that might make a judge more inclined to, go along with what the DA is consenting to. But important to note here, that what she said is she will only consent to dismissing cases in which the convictions were after that crash. So not to say that the judge will necessarily side with her, but it's just something important to consider. And of course, some take issue with Freeman's stance on this, like the man I talked to. He feels like she should consent to dismissing even the older cases. He says it's, troopers' credibility issues likely didn't happen overnight, but that is her position. So the recourse for people like that man I spoke with is to file an MAR and hope that the judge is on their side.
Right. And I would think, a lot of that stuff is dependent on where this SBI investigation goes from here. So where is it headed? What's sort of the next thing that we expect to happen in that investigation?
Yeah, so I've been checking in repeatedly with the SBI, and they told me that they should be wrapping up their investigation really any day now. So I will keep checking in with them. Worth noting that the two troopers, I've been also checking in with the Highway Patrol about their status. They are on administrative duty, so they are still employed by the State Highway Patrol, but they have been reassigned to desk duty. And in terms of, MARs, I asked Lauren Freeman, have any been filed yet in relation to these two troopers? And she told me she does not have an exact number, but yes, a few have been filed and they have been granted.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. We appreciate your reporting on this. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. That's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.